Next up, we have Chad Muma, the linebacker out of Wyoming, who, for me at least, I'm going to try and keep this a little bit quicker because this is an evaluation, I'll be honest, I'm not as confident in for the sole fact that I couldn't get my hands on as much film as I would have liked to for Chad. Just to give you guys an insight into my process, my principle is that I'm going to watch as much film as it takes for me to be confident in the words I've written or the grades that I've given, and in that regard, it's a minimum of 4 games usually. And, oftentimes 5, 6, sometimes even 7. We're talking, 250, 300, 400 snaps in that regard. And with Muma, I could only find 3 games. So, with such a small sample size, there's a chance that, maybe 2 of the 3 games I saw were clunkers, and they were just the 2 worst games he's played in his life. And a guy that I have in the 4th should actually be a 1st or 2nd round talent. Or the flip side is possible, where perhaps these are, 3 of the best games he's ever played. And, if you had access to his full library, you'd realize, like, oh, this guy's actually a 6th round talent. So I'm not saying take these grades with a grain of salt, but I'm saying I am definitely less confident in this grade than I am others. So in that regard, just in terms of Muma as a prospect in general, as well as my grades based on the 3 that I watched. First and foremost, the first note I wrote was his frame was very impressive. You see, he is 6'3", 240 or so pounds. He was actually 246 in season, according to the Wyoming website. Came in at the combine 239. That's not a big deal to me. He probably wanted to run fast and jump high, but he certainly accomplished that goal if that was the purpose. He had a 4.6 340, a 40-inch vertical, a 10-foot 9-inch broad, as well as 27 reps on bench. So all in all, a very impressive day. A little bit less noteworthy in terms of the agility drills, which we'll talk about in a little bit, because I do think we saw some of that on film. But in terms of t-shirt and shorts in Indianapolis, had an absolutely stellar day at the NFL Combine. Now, I will say, with that being said, despite the frame and the athletic intangibles, which are through the roof, it seems, I didn't always see them manifest on film. So some of the actual grades in terms of him putting it together might be a little bit lower than you might expect. First and foremost, range and pursuit, I gave him a 10.5 out of 15. The straight line speed was there and the closing speed was there, but sometimes it felt like, the long speed and a lot of range and being a sideline to sideline guy is being able to have lateral speed as well. And sometimes I just didn't quite see that to the extent that I did for some other players. Where I thought he was actually kind of surprising was his coverage skills. As I also gave him a 10.5 out of 15 there, as I thought that he looked decently fluid in coverage. And, particularly zone coverage, I would say I wouldn't want him dropping back 25 yards off the ball. But if you want somebody to work some shallow zones, maybe some flats, things of that nature, I think a guy like Muma could certainly do the job. We got some dogs barking outside. Hopefully the mic's not picking that up too badly, but no, he was very solid in coverage, all things considered, and intangibles taken into account. I just wouldn't necessarily have expected that. You'd think, oh, big strong guy, 27 reps on bench, he's just going to be a downhill force, and it was actually kind of the opposite almost. That gets into my next grade. The block shedding and ability to play the run in the box, I wasn't nearly as impressed with as I think he probably should be. I give him a 9.25 out of 15, as my first negative note with him was, in all caps, just physicality, question mark. It just didn't seem like he wanted to use his hands, whether it was engaging in blocks, trying to stack and shed blocks, trying to shock blockers, trying to detach from blocks. Didn't really seem like he was either refined in terms of the hand usage, or like he wanted to use his hands. Sometimes he was just avoiding contact all in all, and for a guy with his frame, I'm just saying, why? Like, you have the speed to, more often than not, beat offensive linemen to the particular spot on a play, right? But then on those few reps where they beat you there, you could just come in with, your 4.63 speed and your 27 reps on bench and absolutely jack those guys up and put them on the ground, perhaps, before making a play. And it just didn't seem like he came and attacked the game with that level of physicality. Just for example, Devin Lloyd was a good example of somebody who was a more physical player at the top of the draft. I would say, like a Leo Chenal is somebody who I would have expected him to play more like those guys. Damone Clark out of LSU would be a perfect example. Like, he has the frame and build similar to those guys, but he plays much more finesse, I suppose, rather than necessarily being the most physically imposing guy on the field. Another grade I was a little bit lower on I'll say two. It was IQ and awareness, and then quickness and change of direction, which I think kind of go hand in hand in terms of him and his ability to make plays. I thought the IQ and awareness was rather questionable. I had a couple different notes on, him being sometimes slow to read plays, him making false and incorrect steps, him being easily influenced by various motions and play actions and pump fakes and things of that nature. It felt like, any decoy that the offense was trying to throw out there, he was taking the bait, right? And in that regard, oftentimes found himself out of position, I felt initially, just based off that first read. And then the problem from there, for me, the quickness and change of direction wasn't very good with Mr. Muma, even to the combine results. I didn't think he was as good as he tested on the shuttle or the 3-cone, by example. I gave him a 5.5 out of 10. Now, again, back to the 3-game sample size, two of those games he might have had an ankle sprain that we didn't know about, right? So it's tough to put that much stock into it, but for me, the fluidity in terms of just quickly stopping on a dime and bursting in the opposite direction, I didn't really see that. So when you kind of put those two in concert with each other, you're out of position off your first step, and then you're not very quick getting into your second step and change of direction back to where you need to be. I thought that put him out of position on many plays. Besides that, that's pretty much all I have for you guys in this one. I gave him a good motor grade, 8.25 out of 10. I thought he was rather impressive there. Like, it wasn't that he wasn't working hard, it was just that he was coming up short, I thought, on some instances. In terms of finishing and tackling, I also gave him a little bit of a lower grade. I thought he could be pretty reckless at the point, at the tackle point, whereas instead of tempoing down, it felt like he was more so trying to tempo up and lay these massive blows, whereas instead he needed to maybe be a little bit more secure and have better form to make sure he brought guys down, because there really were quite a few missed tackles. So all in all, that comes out to, for me, a 67.28, which comes out in the 4th round. So I don't know if he's going to go tonight. I'm filming this Friday morning in preparation for day 2, but regardless, I think he's an interesting player because he has a rather high ceiling, I would say. It's just, can you put the size and the athleticism in with some technique and improve some of those things, not extraneous to the game, that make up the game, right? The technique that makes up, what he's doing on the field. I thought they just need to improve some of that and then supplement the raw intangibles with that stuff, because as of right now, it just felt like he was a rather raw yet impressive prospect, but one that maybe could be, I don't want to say a liability on teams, but maybe not make a massive difference on teams right away. Now, like I said, again, I'll keep reiterating it, could be completely wrong, right? Maybe those are just 2 off games, 3 off games that I watched, and next thing you know, he's an all-pro linebacker. I don't think, regardless, that I saw that necessarily, but he could be a solid starter, no question. I think that's certainly within the realm of possibility, and if somebody takes him in the 2nd or 3rd round, and, once we start getting more film available, I would certainly be more than willing to sort of revisit this evaluation and obviously not change it or anything, but just get a better sense of whether this 3-game sample size was a good sample in that regard. The last note that I did have, something I've talked about with other guys, has been sort of these red flags of stuff that is, kind of extraneous to football. One thing that I did want to note with Muma, it's not the biggest of factors on his grade. In fact, it has no factor on his grade. That's why I call it a red flag, because it's something that I frankly don't know anything about. It's the fact that he actually has diabetes type 1 since the age of 13. So now, does that impact his level of play and what he brings to the table? I don't know. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to claim to be, in terms of, there's a chance that medical status scares teams off. Sure. There's also a chance that, he's played with it for multiple years at Wyoming and it hasn't been a problem. So that could go one way or the other. I'll leave that decision to the doctors. I'm just saying, based solely off, the film grade for the 3 games I've watched, 67.275. Round that up to a 67.28. You guys get the deal. That's where I'm at on Muma. I would say 4th round, but I get if there's a little bit of room there on either side. So that being said, that's all I have for you guys in this one. I'm mic'd up, now I'm mic'd out. Hopefully those crazy dogs outside weren't too bad and the mic wasn't picking them up, but I have a strange suspicion that they were right outside my window, it seems. But hopefully, if you guys made it this far, it wasn't a big deal. So with that being said, I'm mic'd up, now I'm mic'd out. Peace, guys. See you next time.